Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin the funeral service. We ask for those that have a cell phone or pager, if you could turn it to the silent mode. Officiating today is Rabbi David Flinkenstein.
If you can all please join me in saying, I'm going to say first Psalm 23 in Hebrew, and then if everyone can please join me saying it in the English, it's in your folders. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi le'echsar, b'nozdesha yarbitzeni, al mei menuchos yinahaleni. Nafshi yeshovav yancheni magle tzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech begeit samovas, lo irara ki ato imodi, shivtecho mishantecho heimo yenachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged zorarai, dishanto v'Hashem roshi kosi revaya, ach tov v'chesed yudifuni kol yemei chayoi, v'shavti beveis Adonai le'orech yamim. Please join me in reciting Psalm 23 together in English. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Dear family and friends, I'm stepping in right now on behalf of Rabbi Chesky Rothman, who is the rabbi of the family back in Rockford. Because of a medical emergency, at the last minute he cannot be here. Thank God he's okay, but he cannot be here at the time. And being presented by Rebbetzin Rothman, who is here. And I can only share what the family has shared together with Rabbi Rothman. And so please excuse me if I didn't do the proper justice. But Rabbi Rothman is here with you totally, fully in heart and spirit, and brings his greatest warmth together to the entire family. Also like to acknowledge the presence of Rabbi Karen Kadar from Beji Be'i in Deerfield. As so many friends and family members are gathered here today, we pay tribute to Motel Rozman, Mordechai ben Leib and Chana. We remember the words of King Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech, who encapsulates and encompasses all of the observances of mourning in just a few simple words. V'hachai yiten el libo, which means, and the living shall take to heart. A funeral is never a time that we schedule. A funeral becomes a priority. We put everything else on hold. It's a time when we stop running and we put our lives on pause. It's a time of reflection. It's a sober moment of appreciation, to appreciate the value, the sanctity, the significance, and frailty of life in general, and more specifically today, to pay tribute and learn from Motel's life. Modern physics has taught us that no substance truly disappears. It only changes its form. Matter is yet another form of energy. If this is so regarding the physical, how much more so when we're talking now about the spiritual? We're talking about the human soul, the neshama, life itself. Real comfort, nechama in Hebrew, is not when we forget or minimize the loss, but it's when we have a paradigm shift. That paradigm shift begins with what we are observing today. In English, this is called a funeral. In Hebrew, this is called a levaya. The two may be similar, but really down to the heart of things, they are two opposites. In English, the word funeral comes from the Old French, la fin, which is the end. The last experience, the last event, the last hurrah. Levaya means to escort, which means that we are here to escort Motel to another stage in life. Because the neshama continues on, life continues on, the soul continues on. It's just in a higher form. So the paradigm shift is that the soul never dies. Only our relationship with the soul changes. As the precious soul of Motel Rozman once lived amongst us, he will now live within us. And the living shall take to heart. So with that in mind, let's reflect upon Motel's special qualities, what we can learn from Motel, and internalize this in our own life. I'd first like to begin by traditionally asking mechila, forgiveness. Forgiveness if anyone, by the way, has wronged him in any way. Now is the time to ask for forgiveness. But there's no way that anyone can encapsulate an individual's entire life in just a few moments. I certainly can't, and certainly without having the opportunity of even having the privilege of knowing Motel personally. But by divine providence, here I am today. Motel was born on October 19th in Ovrich, Ukraine, to his parents Chana and Leib. Motel pretty much grew up on his own. At the young age of 12, during the Second World War, tragically, Motel became an orphan. With his parents gone, brother killed, Motel miraculously survived the war. After ending up in Uzbekistan, abandoned, alone, and having nearly starved from hunger, Motel's older sister, miraculously, Sonia, found him with the help of the Red Cross and brought him to the Ural mountain region to live together with her family. He started working there, a steel factory, at the age of 14 as a labor worker. And while living there in the Ural Mountains, he was then drafted into the Soviet army and served for 5 years as an Air Force technician. Because he grew up on his own, he didn't have a formal, proper education, but he was blessed with golden hands. He had the Yiddish cup, and he used his hands. Anything that he touched, he was able to fix. Back in Ural, after the army, Motel was blessed to meet Bronya. He joined Bronya's family. They took him in. They showered him with love, just like their own son. And they were blessed to be married. Bronya was very learned, very intelligent. And she pushed Motel, encouraged him to continue his education, to get his high school diploma, and later on convinced Motel to even attend a technical university in St. Petersburg. They were blessed to be married in 1953, and then they were blessed with the children. First Anatoly was born, and then his brother Lev. In 1955, the family of four moved to Yelsk, a town about 30 minutes away of the city of Mozir in Belarus. Motel worked there as a labor worker for 34 years. He was a dedicated father, a good father. There for his children, enjoyed being with the children. He would take his boys fishing, take them out to the fields to pick wild mushrooms. And while Motel was good in all domestic things, he was also a terrific cook. He took great care of his car. He was very organized. And Lev, being very similar to his father, he shared this. He shared his life's passions. He shared this together with Lev. They both had golden hands. While Lev lived close to his parents in Mozir and got married there, Motel was later on, Lev's son Sasha was born in 1987, and Motel was very close to him. They would spend a lot of time together. Anatoly, who he loved very much and very dearly, was more like Mom, more the intellectual, more into his studies, but he certainly was very, very proud of him. At the age of 63 in 1989, Motel retired. And eventually, in January of 1992, Motel and Bronya emigrated to the United States, along with their son Lev, their daughter-in-law Larissa, and grandson Sasha, and came directly to Chicago. Motel's first son, Anatoly, and his family joined him in Chicago 1 year later. Bronya had a strong religious background. However, Motel didn't know much. He didn't have that kind of background. He didn't have that kind of education because of his situation. He learned Yiddish in elementary school in the Soviet Union before it was outlawed. And having arrived now in Chicago, in Rogers Park, they got more connected with their Yiddishkeit, with their Judaism, and together with the help of his wife, they learned English. They got reconnected to the Yiddishkeit, to Judaism, and connected to the Jewish community in West Rogers Park at the synagogue free. And in 1995, they moved to Des Plaines. Motel was very social. Had lots of friends. Enjoyed spending time with them. He connected with them. And he felt the blessing of being here in the United States and living in America. He loved driving around, traveling together with the family. They went to Israel, to Mexico, Dominican Republic, and other countries. He would travel to Galena and go fishing there with the family. And this continued until 2005. Those were probably the most precious years. In 2005, Bronya was ill, got sick, and things deteriorated slowly from there. And while throughout his life, having had such a difficult upbringing, difficult childhood during the war, he never spoke about this. This was not part of what he discussed, what he spoke about. He spoke about life. He spoke about moving forward. However, during the years after 2005, as life became more difficult for him, the past caught up with him. Rabbi Motel Rozman shared that at this time when he had an opportunity of meeting him and seeing him so often, at one point he showed him a family photo, the only family photo that he had. And he spoke with such sadness, such pain. This black and white photo of his father and mother together with his brother and two sisters. He felt now being taken back to his childhood, now being taken back to the difficult times, but the strength which was always his family. Bronya passed away in the year 2013. At that point, things got worse. He eventually lost his driver's license due to health issues, and depression set in, which he never really recovered from then. But here, we can also learn from family. His dear children, his dear family, was always there for Motel. In all circumstances, in all situations, they took care of him with love, with consideration, with compassion. There was nothing that could not be done for him. They arranged round-the-clock assistance, complete private health care. Everything was set up for him at home. This is the great mitzvah of honoring parents. In the last few years, as he suffered so much, ironically, he was such a strong person, such strong character. And what was his strength in his early years, perhaps in his later years, became something which he struggled with. Because of his strong character, it was so difficult for him to now be dependent on others. Someone who was so independent should now find himself so dependent on others. Motel, you are now in a more peaceful place. Your strength is regained. Your true strength is here. The strength that you give your family. The strength that you taught them. The strength that you imbued them with. While throughout your life, your strength was something that you took pride in, and your Yiddishkeit is something that although you did not have the opportunity of learning when you were a child, it's not something that you were so learned about, but you had incredible pride, Stolzkeit, Gehebenkeit in who you are as a Jew, as a proud Yid. I encourage everyone here to do a mitzvah, to carry on the legacy of Motel, to take the words of King Solomon and bring them into our own hearts, to do one special mitzvah for Motel. Put on tefillin, give tzedakah, light Shabbat candles, not only for Motel, but also for his place of birth and for his neshama, for all the neshamas that can all certainly use it. It's now a privilege to call upon now Larissa. No? Who's speaking? Who is speaking? Oh, Alex. Okay. I'm sorry.
I got to know my grandfather during my formative years as I grew up. He was an individual who was very strong-willed, very much the patriarch of the family, a very independent person. I remember times when he would escape in the morning to go fishing. That was his passion when I was growing up. And to drive himself to a nearby lake and patiently wait for a fish to come by. Sometimes he would get some, sometimes he wouldn't. He was somebody I admired for the way he fought to live. And even though towards the end of his life he struggled, very much so, he lost a little bit of his independence, and I was there to help him with some things and learn more about his past. I'm glad that he's now at peace. It was difficult for us to watch. It was difficult for him to go through. And I guess what I'm going to remember most is my grandmother's love and my grandfather's perseverance.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'll speak on behalf of grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So just like Israel is one who struggles with God, Motel was definitely a warrior. You know, he struggled with time. He always fought every day of his life until the very last day. So he was a child, a survivor, a father, a grandfather, a grandfather, patriarch, and ultimately warrior. You know, he was not an easy man. He was not a man of many words, perhaps not the most tender of people sometimes, but he got things done. He was a true and proud warrior who stood tall against all challenges. He is the strong root from which our family tree has sprung. Together with Bronyam, they worked hard their whole life, tried to raise children best they could under the circumstances. He lived, survived through war, through Cold War, through chaos after the communism crash, then later in America, home of the free. Giving up was just not in his vocabulary. Not working was not there either. He worked until he physically could not. He would resist any and all advice to stop doing anything, and he just kept doing it until his body forced him not to. He walked until he could not walk, and then he still tried to walk. He lived longer than anyone we know, and even after his body was giving up, his mind and heart were so strong that he just refused to give up. He actually tried to escape from the hospital while on his deathbed, and broke a hip where we thought he couldn't move. He was actually escaping and wanted to go home. But he managed to keep everybody on their toes until the very last day. When he was given 2 days, he lived for a whole month, and honestly, we thought he could just keep going. I was very surprised that he passed because I thought he would just go on forever. That's the kind of impression he gave you. But I think he just wanted to make a point to God that this is what I do, this is who I am. He was a true warrior and an example of warriors in our family, Jewish warriors who never give up and always fight. The most memorable story is one of horror and hope. As Rabbi has mentioned, he lived peacefully in a small town in Ukraine, not far from Belarus. And one day the world changed. He was awakened by bombs. His town was under attack. by an invading army. Bombs and shells fell all around. They were gathered hastily in order to evacuate. They had abandoned their lives, abandoned their homes, escaped the aggression, escaped death and annihilation. And in the process, he lost his family, almost the whole family. Even the evacuation was bombed. And history sadly repeats itself. But that moment defined the future of his family, whether there would be a future. And we thank him and God for making it happen, for we would not be here now. As he barely survived, as did we all. The present moment we are in now hung in the balance in the face of evil. No one should have to live through war. This is a reminder to stay vigilant, be ready, as history will repeat itself again. Those that survive war are heroes. As they pass, so do memories of horror that could lead to new horror. Their memories should never be forgotten. Their sacrifice should always be honored. These survivors may not be perfect in every aspect, but they created a foundation of strength that all Rozmans and his descendants now embody. And for that, we will be eternally grateful. Our children and their children will learn of the sacrifices that our ancestors, including Motel, who has joined them now, did to make the present moment a reality, and lesson that we should never get comfortable, as there always be problems in the future. Like Motel, we will be strong, we will be vigilant, we will be informed, we will be fair, we will not succumb to false information. We will be ready. We will be warriors ready to fight for justice, fight for a better tomorrow, a safer planet, a fair world, and be ready to fight to the end. And this is what I think of when I think of Motel. A strong, proud warrior and a foundation of our family. May he rest in peace, and may God welcome him to the light.
I kind of represent daughters-in-law. I had a very good relationship with both my parents-in-law, and I enjoy and I'm proud of it. I really, truly love Bronya, as all of you, and I learned tremendously from her because she was a brilliant. For Motel, it was a true gift because her family not only was very kind and was a great family, but also they embraced him as their son. And all I remember when I joined this family 45 years ago, even difficult to say, it's 45 years ago, my grandma Fruma told me many, many times, on many, many occasions, don't be upset with Motel because he is an orphan. And I never saw the war. I never survived the war. I didn't really have a clue what she was talking about until he told me himself and showed this picture of his lost family. I think only his strong character allowed him, and everyone mentioned it, but it's very true, allowed him to survive it and become who he is with help of Bronya's family. I don't think he will be who he is without them. His end was set. He's surrounded by people who cared for him. It's very hard to find such help and assistance that he had. But you can't really save a person from himself. His strength at the end became his, at some point, enemy because he was fighting. He was fighting for every breath, for every moment of living. He was fighting with us. He was fighting with people who were helping him, not because he didn't like them. It's just because he was that strong. He wanted Bronya to take him with herself on that journey, but at the same time, he wasn't 100% sure he wants to go there. At the end, he did go. And all we have is a memory of this fighter, unbelievable, strong person who I'm positive in his heart loved people, loved his family. I just wish he's in a better place where there is no pain and no suffering. So God bless his heart.
Thank you all for sharing that. We certainly see here that Motel, your strength, your deeds, they're not gone. They continue to live on. They live on in your dear children, in Anatoly, Tanya, Lev, Larissa. They live on in your grandchildren, Boris, Natalia, Anna, Howard, and Alex, and your great-grandchildren, Jonathan and Iris. And they live on in all those who were blessed to be touched by your life. Let us firmly resolve to make all of your qualities, to make these mitzvot, to make them a part of our lives. Tei nafshei sorer b'tzir hachayim, soll's to haben a lichtige Gan Eden, soll sein a gute better. May your soul be bound in the bond of life, and be an advocate on behalf of all your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, all those who are here, and also for those who are suffering today, that we should have peace. If everyone could please rise for the Kel Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Sheichei Miraimim, Hamsei Menucha Nechaina, Al Kanfei Hashchina, B'maleis Kedei Shemeterim Kezera Ki Amazhirim Is Nishmas, Mordechai ben Leib, Sheholach Leilamai, Pavur Shon Mispalim Balaskoros Nishmasai, Began Edem Tehei Menuchasai, Lochem Balarachamim Yastireu B'seisek Nofav Leilamim, V'yitzrei B'tzarachayim Es Nishmasai, Adinoi Hunachalosai V'yanuach B'sholem Amishkavai, V'neimar Amen. O God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant proper repose in the sheltering wings of your presence, in the lofty levels of the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament onto the soul of Motel, son of Leib and Chana, who has gone into his world and for whose memory we pray. May his repose be in paradise. May the Master of compassion bring him under the cover of God's wings and bind his soul in the bond of life. May the Lord be his heritage, and may he repose on his resting place in peace. And let us all respond, Amen.
You may be seated for a moment. This concludes the service here at the chapel. The interment will take place at Memorial Park Cemetery in Skokie. For those who will be joining the family in procession, we'll be lining up in a parking lot. We ask that you have your headlights and hazard lights on while driving in procession and drive as close as safety permits to the vehicle in front of you. The family at the conclusion of the interment will be getting together at the Rozman residence, 8936 North Parkside Avenue, apartment 409, where they'll be there for the remaining of the day. If we can all rise as we escort the casket from the chapel. Once we've left the chapel, we ask everybody to immediately go to their vehicles. Please rise. guarantee your cars.